What's up, everybody? My name is Sam Callahan, and welcome to another issue of Swan Signal Live. I got another awesome episode in store for you guys today. We're going to be talking about Bitcoin venture capitalism. We have a leading VC with us today, and I think venture capitalism is really interesting and perhaps misunderstood by many because they help fund the next generation of entrepreneurs and help drive the Bitcoin ecosystem forward by providing much needed capital for these entrepreneurs to build products and innovate on this amazing monetary protocol. And one of the leading VCs in this space is the founding partner of Ego Death Capital with Mrs. Andi Pitt. She is with us today. Andi Pitt, how are you? Welcome to Swan Signal Live.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so I wanted to bring you on because I think it's a really interesting time. We've kind of seen in terms of venture capitalism, you saw the deal counts and just the amount of capital invested in the broader crypto ecosystem in 2021 and 2022 just explode. I mean, everyone just went into crypto and it was this bonanza of money. There's funds getting made all over the place with all of these tokens. But then there was a very small handful of VCs that were like, actually, we're going to focus only on Bitcoin. And we saw now after 2022, the bear market, all of these things get wiped out. A lot of these funds lost out a lot of money. And I think more and more people are trying to are better understanding why you guys maybe took that position way back then. Is that what you guys are hearing from like maybe LPs and investors now, where they're kind of better understanding the Bitcoin only proposition after the bear market the last couple of years?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot more interest in the space from VC funds, from investors, founders, developers, advisors from crypto, suddenly kind of seeing all of the challenges in whether it's in the Ethereum ecosystem or elsewhere, and starting to really deeply question maybe why that is more so than they had. And that's kind of, and then seeing, I think, all of the excitement and all of the technological developments we've had on Bitcoin in the last 2 years, and those kind of combined factors are suddenly starting to bring people to really think more about the Bitcoin only narrative and to really start to come across into that way of viewing the world.
Yeah, I remember in I think it was the Bitcoin conference in 2021, there was this presentation called the Bitcoin stack, like as in the technology stack.
Mm-hmm.
And it really resonated with me because I think it was Ryan Gentry from Lightning Labs. And he was just talking about how there is this stack being built and you have this foundational layer, which is the big Bitcoin base layer that is the most decentralized, the most secure, which can't be really replicated. And that you're seeing this kind of ecosystem evolve over time in layers. How have you seen that grown over the last year or two? Like, are you just seeing that kind of grow, become more robust over time with these different layers of functionalities? You have an interesting vantage point, given your position at Ego Death. Like, what are you seeing there?
Yeah, so I think it's useful just to conceptualize the ecosystem in comparison to the traditional finance system. So if you think of, say, TradFi, where you have the Federal Reserve is sort of that really solid, theoretically base layer, and then you have the scaling layers on top of that, which allow people to interact. Like normal people don't go and take out $5 from the Fed, the Federal Reserve Bank. And so we think about it similarly in Bitcoin, where you have Bitcoin as being the only really decentralized cryptocurrency, the only one that's both decentralized and secure. And so it's really the only solid place on which to build. Everything else, we sort of have this analogy of building on quicksand. And so if you want to build something of long-term value, you want to build on a chain that you know will be robust and be around in the next 5, 10, 20 years. So what we've seen, I guess the first really big development in that was the Lightning Network, was really allowing the scalability of Bitcoin, because in trading off, in ensuring decentralization and security and effectively that really solid situation for Bitcoin, it's trading off decentralization. So that's why you need the layer above it to achieve the decentralization. So the Lightning Network has been around for a while, but really is still, from a technological perspective, not where you would expect it to be. So it's still very, very early. Use of the Lightning Network has really increased dramatically. I think it was up 1,200% in the space of 18 months. And that it's very hard to track because it's private. But so the rough indications are it's 12x around. So it's seeing rapid growth and more use cases that are using it. But from a technological perspective, there are still many limitations that are actually being worked through. So it's still very early. And then what we've seen, we had this thesis that there would be a whole range of technologies coming out around Bitcoin, and we've certainly seen that play out. And it's all sort of happening in the last 12 months and sort of in the coming years as well. So some of the updates on Lightning Network, so things like splicing, which will allow for certain additional use cases of Lightning to emerge, and then scaling and different custody solutions. So Fedi is a company we invested in.
Mm-hmm.
And Fedi mints would effectively become almost like a scaling technology for Lightning. So the Lightning Network itself can't really scale to everyone having a Lightning node. So you need either custodial Lightning or scaling solutions or other technologies on Lightning for that to emerge. And so Fedi is one of those. We're seeing new technologies come out in the form of, for instance, DLCs, so discrete log contracts. You can think of those as akin to being smart contracts, is how they're talked about in the Ethereum ecosystem, which allow for all sorts of decentralized use cases on top of Bitcoin, and they would also be on top of Lightning. So that tech has also been around for a while, hasn't really seen a use case really get traction. So we're really excited. There's some announcements coming out that I can't say, but where we know that there's some companies that are really developing that in the ecosystem, which we're excited to see. Then we have things like Taproot assets on top of Lightning. So that was developed by Lightning Labs, which allows for effectively all sorts of tokenized economies to sit on top of Lightning. And the one that we really love the most, we see of real value for the world, is stablecoins.
Mm-hmm.
So having native stablecoins on top of Bitcoin, you can already do it with Liquid. Lightning is just another factor for that. So I could go on. But to sort of summarize, there's so many exciting technologies. There's BitVM. There is like a bunch of interesting, exciting technologies that we see going into 2024 and beyond.
No, I share your enthusiasm with the things like DLCs and splicing. Fedi Mint is interesting too, because it kind of has better privacy guarantees too. So that's another maybe issue you could say with Bitcoin is, trying to figure out some privacy solutions at the different layers. Fedi also does that too. So that's interesting. I wanted to talk a little bit about these ETFs and if they kind of impact how you see it kind of impacting maybe the venture capital space of how you look through investments. We're seeing more of the financialization of Bitcoin. Does that present other opportunities of maybe companies that are building in that space, or no, for you guys at EcoDeath, are you guys kind of just more focused on different aspects of the ecosystem?
Yeah, no, we look at financial technology for sure. And in fact, I really consider a lot of what we're investing into really more akin to fintech. It's almost like the fintech of Bitcoin. It's not all fintech, it has consumer and different applications. I would say so that there could be companies that are building custody solutions. There could be companies that are building financial products. It could be a direct financial services company. So we are definitely seeing that. I would say the impact of the ETF on venture capital is probably more sort of third order, even not even second order. Like first order, it's not really that direct. They're investing in Bitcoin. I think the key thing is allowing people to put their IRA in a really seamless way into Bitcoin. The second order, I would say, is it's really bringing people into the network. So it's really contributing to the network effect overall of Bitcoin. So more people suddenly are hearing about Bitcoin. Suddenly you have BlackRock, you have Fidelity kind of almost rubber stamping it in a way. And so it sort of brings this degree of legitimacy. And that starts to shift, I guess, the public narrative and the public perceptions around it, which will allow more people, we think is somewhat inevitable, to really start investing in Bitcoin. And then as a result, learning about it, and then, ideally getting more involved. And that sort of just brings these sort of bigger order network effects to Bitcoin, which sort of then will impact the ecosystem overall, with people using it, with people wanting to use it, with people wanting to invest in it. So it's more sort of a second, third order effect we see rather than a first order.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think just from a regulatory clarity perspective, it is that stamp of approval. And we've seen after the FTX collapse in the broader crypto ecosystem, we have seen more regulatory clarity and how Bitcoin, the one commonality between all these lawsuits is that you won't see Bitcoin really named in any of them, because Bitcoin has the regulatory clarity as a commodity compared to any of these other, crypto assets. Now, you brought up tokenization. I think it's a very fascinating conversation. Do you see, these tokenized economies all growing and eventually being built on the Bitcoin blockchain in some way or fashion, where they kind of take advantage? Like I imagine it like a funnel where you have all these, tokenized economies built on it, and then at the bottom they kind of take advantage of Bitcoin's settlement assurances, essentially, or security, way at the bottom. But is that how you kind of see things playing out? You brought up Taproot assets, where you'll have stable coins and even like tokenized stocks and real estate. It's been talked about for many years. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's definitely the world we want to exist. We think it's a few years away. Technically, you can already do listings on top of Lightning and Bitcoin. The biggest issue with that, like a proper stock offering, for instance, the biggest problem with that is liquidity and market making. So if you think about a traditional financial services firm, so if they do an IPO of a company, the investment bank that runs the IPO will typically become the market maker. And they typically commit to doing that for a certain period of time after the stock is IPO'd, to basically support the company's trading and liquidity in that company. So when I was at Goldman, I wasn't on the equities team, but I remember the day we did the Snapchat IPO. And so at that time, Goldman then commits and they make a market in it to make sure that there's trading liquidity to really support that volume. And so the listings, there have been, I think, a couple done, and the issue has just been liquidity. Like, there's no one market making. How does anyone that wants to sell find a buyer? And it just sort of doesn't work. So that's the key piece that sort of would need to be figured out one way or another for a real listing on Bitcoin. And in the meantime, you're seeing all of these BRC20 tokens, which are effectively meme coins, as I'm sure a lot of your listeners know, and clogging up the mempool. But those are much more there's not really any utility to them necessarily.
Yeah. Do you have any further thoughts on that? Like the ordinals debate?
Yeah, I'm not going to weigh in. Like personally, I think there's like value in digital art. Like the concept of digital art makes sense. The same way that a reproduction of a photograph. At one point, people said that doesn't make any sense. Like, if I can just replicate it, why is there any value to me owning a print of a photograph? And that's obviously held up in the art market. So from an artist perspective, like the concept of digital art makes complete sense. Like what form it should and shouldn't be in is like a whole different question.
Got it.
So that's like probably a much more open debate. I see one of your listeners has said most meme tokens are going to zero, which I would not disagree with. But what we're seeing actually is a lot of crypto VCs starting and wanting to come in and fund companies that are listing a token. So we're seeing a lot of interest from crypto VCs now in the Bitcoin world, but only if those companies will list a token, and only if those companies basically commit to doing a token, because all of these funds that have been investing in crypto the last few years have gotten so used to just all they want is early exit liquidity. Like, they're not investing companies for long-term contribution to society, or, creating some sort of product that actually in the long term creates value for people and therefore you get financial returns. It's like it's like something just got so warped, I think, in the mind of investors because of being able to basically get early exit liquidity off retail in these tokens.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you brought that up, because I was going to bring up that topic. You felt like these VCs went heavy into these tokens because of the early exit liquidity. Like typically a VC, it would take longer to find that exit. They would have to be an acquisition, or they would have to go public, and it takes years. But with these crypto tokens, they could just get tokens, and then once it got listed on exchange, there's your exit liquidity, and they would just be like, wow, we can turn this around really quick, and that improves the performance of their funds. And now you're saying that they're going to Bitcoin, but they are acquiring these tokens. Now, when you guys look for LPs or investors, do you try to find them that some that are aligned with your vision, and that you want like long-term thinking investors at EcoDeath Capital that kind of understand, okay, maybe things take a little bit slower, first off, in Bitcoin development because it's very purposeful. We're trying to build long-lasting tools and innovations, the future of the monetary system. And that maybe, they look at these crypto VCs and they say like, well, they're flipping these things for every 6 months. And no, we don't want investors like that. We want Bitcoin focused and investors that are aligned. Do you guys think like that?
Yeah, definitely. And our fund is set up as a traditional venture fund. So it's basically a 10-year life. We went very much away from what crypto has done and back to sort of the roots of venture capital, if you like, of really helping these companies develop and contribute and build new products. And so, yeah, we're very, very clear with our investors that they have to be in this for a long-term time horizon. And our investors love that. They're very aligned with what we're doing, with wanting to invest in companies and products that create long-term value. And that's how you accrete value effectively.
Yeah, that's cool. And then do you guys, when you're thinking about the performance of a fund, do you guys use Bitcoin as your benchmark? Because I feel like, traditionally venture funds will use something like the S&P 500 but as a Bitcoin focused fund, do you guys use Bitcoin as your benchmark?
We kind of look at a range of different benchmarks. Bitcoin is definitely one of them. Because some people will invest in us, they might consider it as an investment instead of Bitcoin, or a lot of our investors will have a large portfolio of Bitcoin and then they'll have an allocation as well to venture capital. So in a way, it's a way to get exposure to the whole the ecosystem and investment in the venture capital. Yeah, it's sort of to a degree uncorrelated, but you're still getting exposure. So internally, we certainly have targets that we base versus Bitcoin. And then we also recognize some investors, some particularly bigger investors, maybe they have a portfolio, they might have real estate, they might have Bitcoin, they might have venture, they might have all of these things. So it sort of depends on the investor. So we benchmark against everything, but internally it's very much compared to the Bitcoin price.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're right. Like if you're a high net worth individual and you're just going to venture capital, you're really interested in Bitcoin, but you're kind of looking at this as like a way to diversify, especially if you already own a lot of Bitcoin. So it makes a lot of sense. I wanted to talk a little bit about the new fund that Ego Death announced that it's raising. It's raising a $100 million fund too. Focus again on investing in Bitcoin companies. So what can you share about the new fund, and congratulations on launching it or starting the fundraise. It's very exciting for the Bitcoin ecosystem, really.
Yeah, so we started the raise really only last week. We've had a lot of, it's really exciting to see the momentum, a lot of really amazing investors that are interested. So we're really focused on the Series A stage in this fund. So our previous fund was 25 million. It was geared towards the seed level companies. That's kind of where the ecosystem was at when we had this idea to start the fund 2 years ago. And now sort of some of those companies are maturing, the ecosystem is developing. So what we're seeing is sort of looking forward over the next 2 to 3 years is this maturity of those companies getting to the Series A stage. And we saw this big gap where there's no really dedicated Bitcoin fund that's able to support these companies in a really active way through the Series A stage. So that's the intention with the fund. We're really, really excited.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's super cool. I mean, because you're right, there's probably a gap. I mean, a lot of these smaller Bitcoin VC funds were focused on the seed stage, and now that they've grown, they were successful. They still need partners, and they want partners that are aligned with their values. And so Ego Death could kind of slip right in there. I noticed that as part of your first fund, one of the investments you guys made, one of your portfolio companies, was Wolf, which is an accelerator. I was wondering if you could go into a little detail about why you decided to invest in that, because it's a little different than just a startup or a company. This is a lightning focused accelerator. It's a great team. I've met a lot of them. Maybe can you talk a little bit about your investment in Wolf and why you decided to go that route?
Yeah, absolutely love the guys at Wolf. what we were seeing was a lot of companies we were speaking to, a lot of entrepreneurs were a bit earlier stage than where we could invest. And at that time, there wasn't really a good support mechanism for those entrepreneurs. And so we saw the investment in Wolf as a way to really support the whole ecosystem, to support those earlier stage founders that we couldn't invest in out of the fund, but we could support them through Wolf. So that's, I think, we also see it as a good financial investment because we get the investments into those companies. And so it's really kind of on both sides, but really, like, we love it. So Nico and I normally go up to Wolf for each cohort. We meet with all the teams. We get to spend some time with them, give them some advice. Hopefully it's valuable. You never know. And so it's a great way to just really support a lot of the earlier stage founders.
Yeah, when I was there, I mean, the facilities are it's incredible there. You just feel it in the environment too. I mean, speaking to some of those entrepreneurs, I just left so inspired about what's being built on Bitcoin and some of the intelligence and the drive of some of these entrepreneurs. I mean, it's just a fantastic environment to be around. So very cool. Like I wish Wolf the best. And I think another cohort is just started, or they just kind of opened applications. So if you're an entrepreneur, listen to this. Go check them out if you're building on Lightning and Bitcoin. So in terms of ego death, what you guys are looking at, I wanted to pose the question, just, when you look out in the Bitcoin ecosystem, what's some things that you think are still problems that need better solutions? Or what do you think you look out and you're just like, okay, we have to fix that. We have to get that better. What would you like to see? What would it kind of intrigue you as an investor?
Oh, many things. I think there's so much opportunity. There is so much that isn't done right. So anything or isn't done well. And I think the key things I would talk about if people are thinking of building is really thinking about a particular group of people maybe that they have familiarity with and the problems that they experience. So, and then being also really, really practical around what the solution is. Not sort of a technology that's in search of a problem. So there's still a lot of technology to be built, I guess, allowing interface between Lightning and companies, interfacing between scaling and custody solutions for Lightning, really seamless ways to use Bitcoin and Lightning. So lots of UI, UX improvements that could happen. Custody is a big challenge. Scalability, I would say also, Lightning, as I mentioned, isn't necessarily something that can scale to each person in the world having a node. That's not what it was ever designed for. And so how are we going to get everyone in the world having access into the Bitcoin system and being able to transact? I think what's interesting is also thinking about maybe where money is used and there's friction in money today, and then how people are interacting with money, what products can be built that maybe help to use Bitcoin. There's one company we invested in which is in stealth, so I can't say too much, but they're sort of building a technology that's not specifically for Bitcoin, but it's a way people will be using Bitcoin. So I think just really being this realistic look at if you think about every way that you want people to interact within Bitcoin, where can they not do it and why? So whether it's cross-border transfers, why are people not using it now? Theoretically the technology is there, but it's still really hard. So if I just want to send money to my friend in France, I still have to basically do a wire transfer. So is there a way that what is actually from a really practical perspective stopping me from doing that today?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just that she needs to download the wallet. Maybe it's there, but maybe it's a product that's actually specific for the France geography. So that's what Relay is doing, is creating this European specific product that's super easy to use.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense.
That's a bit of a general.
The technology is there, right? The technology is there, but what's stopping people from using it right now?
Yeah,
and trying to find.
So you could. Yeah, and so it's things I don't know if people are familiar with N26 or Revolut in Europe. which is like the neobank. So like, I think the neobanking concept is really interesting because it didn't really do anything new. Like the banking products were always there. Everyone could always get a debit card. You could always like do a bank transfer, but they created an app that made it like so easy and so clean, and like how we want to interact with things. We don't want like this old school form where we have to like fill it all, like just a quick swipe through, you apply and then it's done. So that's why I think a lot of UX UI like is a really interesting way of like, that's actually one of the biggest issues with Bitcoin right now.
UX UI, I couldn't agree more. The last thing I actually want to talk about is like the convergence of different technologies around Bitcoin. I know that I thought you wrote one of the best pieces on Nostr, and I know Jeff's pretty bullish on Nostr as well. And so there's Nostr, there's AI, and people think Bitcoin and AI are like a match made in heaven. How are you thinking about Bitcoin and the convergence of other emerging technologies and kind of how they fit together to kind of form this new future?
Yeah, I think AI is probably the biggest one we think about today, just because it's so top of mind. We certainly started using AI in my day to day. I use it every day. In terms of how it will interact with Bitcoin, I think the sort of high level things are thinking, Bitcoin is sort of the perfect technology for a bot to interact with, that a bot can have a digital wallet, it can make value transfers. So an AI, basically how AIs transact with AIs is very likely to be over a digital currency, and Bitcoin obviously is the key candidate for that. So how would that technology work from a practical perspective? Where are they at in terms of the development of AIs to actually do that? Does that even make sense? So I think that's a topical one. I think the other aspect of AI is, I think AI is just going to be it already is sort of involved in everything, and it's going to be even more involved in everything. I think one of the big questions around AI is privacy, data protection, not data protection, but hang on, I'm losing the words.
Like personal information.
Yeah, like identity verification.
Yeah.
Or verification in general. And so Bitcoin is being this like immutable base layer where everything is verifiable. Like how could that interact in a way to some sort of like verification system in a world where, videos are everything, any sort of identity is so easy.
There's fakes, and it could be the truth machine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So already you're seeing like fintechs really struggling with like KYC identity verification because, so much is online now and people can so easily fake IDs and now fake the videos. So I don't know how that will interact with Bitcoin, but I think there's going to be interesting convergences there of like this ledger of truth in a way.
Ledger of truth, that immutable nature. Well, we're out of time. I know you got to run. So where can people just find more about Ego Death Capital, or just follow your work real quick, and then I'll let you go?
Yeah, you can go to egodeath.capital. If you want to get in touch, we have a form submission there, a contact form. Follow us on Twitter. Our GPs, Jeff Booth, Lynn Alden, Preston Pish, Nico Lechuga, of course. So any of us, and the Ego Death Capital account you can follow as well.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Andy. You guys got an incredible team over there, and best of luck with the new fund. I appreciate you joining Swan Signal Live and sharing your insights.
Thanks so much. See you later.
Yeah. Have a great day.
Bye.
Well, I really enjoyed that. Like these venture capitalists, they have to kind of see out into the future and actually put capital to work. And they really are supporting some of these founders that are building on Bitcoin. Sometimes they're like the unspoken heroes because these entrepreneurs, they need support. They need capital to kind of keep things going and to grow. And these venture capitalists like Andi Pitt and many others help make that dream happen and help the ecosystem grow. And so go check out Ego Death Capital if you want to learn more about their work. I appreciate them coming on the show and sharing some of those insights. So next week we got another excellent show. We have a couple people who are talking about nation state adoption in Bitcoin. One is a returning guest that is very popular, so I think you guys will enjoy it. Let me know what you thought of this show. Like, comment, subscribe to this channel to learn more about Swan and to get more of the content that we produce every single day for you guys to push Bitcoin's adoption. Thanks again for joining, and I am out.